Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Today we welcome Jeff Boyd. Jeff is the global leader of the healthcare and life science practice at Heidrick Struggles. Heidrick Struggles is a global talent advisory firm, one of the top in the world. And this conversation is special for me because Jeff is a friend. And he was a friend actually before I even knew he was a leader in the life science space. And he is part of my team that's going to be helping me up Mount Kilimanjaro in September of 2025. Who Jeff is to me is authenticity. Jeff has been on a journey, and it has developed his desire and the natural outflow of his authenticity to share his story and to authentically inquire about the stories of others. This was a special conversation for me, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one with Jeff Boyd. Jeff Boyd, welcome to the show. This is really an honor for me to invite a person who is a friend and then brings their wisdom and experience from the life sciences. So really excited to have you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here with you.
So I just did a brief introduction of you and who you are to me. Would you share with us what you're up to in the world?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. It's interesting you asked the question when I'm here in New York City and have been with my team here at Heidrick Struggles, and we've been a part of the DCAT conference, which is one of the premier conferences for pharmaceutical services and products. So there's a lot of buzz in the city related to deals and transactions and filling pipelines. So this week, I think what I'm up to is really hearing the stories of some really interesting executives, hearing the stories of some really interesting companies that are making a difference ultimately for patients. So that's what's top of mind in my world this week.
Mm-hmm. And how do you show up to those conversations? Because Heidrick Struggles has a particular service that you bring to the industry, and I'm sure business development is on your mind to some degree, or to a large degree. I'm wondering, what's your mindset when you come into that type of environment that you just described?
Yeah, I think you mentioned business development. I'd like to think that that's probably the last thing that our team and that I'm focused on. I share, Jeff, and certainly you and I have had these discussions over our lunch times at the diner in New Jersey, that stories are important. And I do think that in life science, and particularly the bioscience sector and or biopharma sector and bioscience products that support that sector are making such an incredible impact to patients. And so I think probably the best place to start is at the human level and asking that question. Tell me about your story this week. How's your week going? What are some highlights of your DCAT story this week? And I found that it's so interesting when you talk about a story, because I think it unlocks something in childhood and people start to really share, and you see their passions. So that's how we've been showing up, hearing some great stories of candidates, of executives, of clients, and ultimately of organizations.
It's a, if I may say, a unique approach. And I say that because we live in, especially here in the West, get it done, hustle and grind, up and to the right, always just, more and more. And it would be natural for you to maybe say, or, well, yeah, we're looking for how we can serve this person, or who in their network we can serve,
Mm.
or what their company needs in terms of a role they're looking to fill. So it'd be natural, given the paradigm that most of us operate in, or most of the Western world at least.
Mhm.
What is it that enables you to open your hands and let that go to a degree, and to just be present in that moment to the story?
Mm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we are a culture, we are an industry, frankly, that is based on production and deadlines and clinical development pipelines and CMC outputs and BLA filings and first to market strategies. And that's all important as long as it's frankly aligned to the right things. But with regard to these discussions with super busy executives, I think ultimately you get to that point, ideally, because the stories of organizations ultimately have a lot to do with the people in those organizations, and the success of those organizations relate to the leadership of those people. And then quite organically, we talk about team and how is the team doing? How can we support those team efforts, either through recruitment in the world that I work in, or through leadership development, and through some of the other offerings that we have. And then, we also want to spend time on that individual. Many of them have so many gifts to share, skills, experiences. They would be very useful on boards that our clients are looking to fill. And so I think we ultimately get to the discussion of leadership and how we might be able to help, but it's really never the first motivation.
Hmm. So you brought the word story. Tell us your story, and let me give a lens. So there's a quote that we love on the show by John Ruskin that says, the highest reward for our work is not what we get from it, but who we become.
Mm.
I mean, you have a long history in this space, the biosciences, life sciences. Would you share the story of your becoming?
Mm. Yeah. I think that's the word, Jeff, becoming, rather than who have I become. I think about a book that my wife loved, the memoir of former First Lady Michelle Obama, actually entitled Becoming, because I don't think we ever fully become. I think we're always becoming something. Um, yeah, and that's what's so exciting about this stage that I'm in of life. Um, yeah, I'm at a point where I just am really have become super aware of who I am, mostly through trials and tribulations and mountains and valleys, as I like to say, and that you and I discuss, and owning that. Not only owning it, but supporting others who, frankly, in some ways may not even be able to understand their own reality of their trial and tribulation, and how that can impact their leadership and their lives. So that's a great place in life to be. Getting ready to send two young adults out in the world to make their own difference. Monica and I setting about as empty nesters with our own adventures in mind, finding a career that dreams are made of, where I have the ability to help and support, is probably what I'm becoming. Yeah, my own story, Jeff, is probably unique. I mean, I started out actually as the son of a veterinarian working in the food industry, leading large manufacturing plants at a pretty early age, learning on the job, as they say, recognizing that, frankly, people, no matter what they're doing, as long as they're being treated properly with a degree of respect, that they're aligned to a vision perhaps greater than themselves, you can start to get results. It was my first taste of leadership at the age of 23 with pretty big groups. Leaned into that leadership, made my way into really bioproducts or products, I would say diagnostic products, and did that in the function of human resources. But when I jumped into these roles in biopharma, leadership started to say, look, you're pretty good at advising our teams from the sideline. Why don't you lead the teams? And I said, look, I've got a communications degree from University of Tennessee. I don't understand some of these sciences. Oh, you can figure that out. Well, there began a path of leadership through the site levels, the regional levels, ultimately the global levels in some pretty large global organizations. Interestingly, Swiss organizations, to behemoths, and was that journey in products and pharmaceutical services, contract development and manufacturing for an emerging modality, cell and gene therapy, that a group of us started a little CDMO in the back of a laboratory in Walkersville, Maryland, that ultimately would develop some really novel therapeutics. And it was that work that then led me to Novartis Pharmaceuticals to head up their cell and gene programs, mainly focused at the time on one particular therapeutic, the CTL019 compound, which would eventually become Kymriah, the first approved immunotherapy, CAR T therapy, for the indication of childhood leukemia or acute lymphoblastic leukemia in children, and then diffuse large B-cell lymphoma in adults. And so, look, that was a great journey. We brought it to market in 5 years, unprecedented, with a unanimous vote from the FDA. Since then, tens of thousands of patients, of young kids who are living full lives that are the same age as my young adults who were really destined to die from their disease, are making their own impact in the world and writing their own stories. And at that time, I just told a colleague here over coffee, it was kind of my Michael Jordan moment. I got out of the industry on top, realized I wanted to do something different. Had worked with the firm that I'm now employed by at Novartis, and said, I want to do something in leadership. And that led me here, where I'm now managing the region Americas for Heidrick Struggles, really working across all of our different industry sectors in healthcare and life sciences. So, and again, that's to circle way back to the original question on becoming. This is just a platform that I would have never dreamed to be able to impact organizations through leadership advisory that I was never able to do in my industry career.
Yeah, there's so much there, Jeff, that I'm drawn to. I always think about, and where I go to is those early days. Thinking about with your dad, or those food manufacturing, and where you were thrust into those moments of leading large groups of people, and probably saying to yourself, maybe like you'd said at Novartis, like, I don't really know how to do this. I'm wondering what are the lessons or those key memories that you have from those early days that you still draw on today?
I'll tell you about one that I've just been talking about. So I had lunch with a good friend and my former mentor. He was a boss. Now he's a client. He chairs a couple of boards for doing great work in life science. now after his own retirement as a executive in the industry. And he and I started work together 25 years ago. And I walked into an organization in Maryland, at the company that eventually would become Lonza, which is a huge Swiss pharma services company. And we had a team of some people who were what we call in leadership key influencers, but they were not influencing quite in the more constructive ways that I would have hoped, particularly as a leader. And Sean gave me the advice and said, you know what? One of the strategies is that lightness will ultimately overcome darkness. So flood the system with light, bring in optimistic people, bring in your own optimism. And then either they will change and they will become part of the light, or that darkness will eventually be snuffed out. And I think that is actually, Jeff, a lesson that I have used ever since, as I have worked with teams now, either internally or externally with my clients. That's one. The other, and I just wrote an article about this, is a little more tactical, but I think it actually relates to CEOs out there who are perhaps in that kind of production phase of their own life. Walk the floor. I'm an ops guy from way back, and you only see what's happening if you're on the floor. Now, that floor looks different when you go rise in an organization. For me, it was literally walking the floor with a hard hat and a hairnet. And as I got into pharma, it became gowning up in the clean room to really get in there and see where the work was done. I think about a pivotal time that I told our quality team I want to sign up for the gowning validation, which is not inconsequential in the world of pharmaceutical manufacturing, because you are maintaining a sterile environment through your clothing. And they said, well, you're the boss. You don't need to go in there. I said, oh, I need to go in there. Well, I failed the gowning validation 3 times, eventually got through it. And then I was on the floor with the teams, not only watching, but helping. So I think it's a lesson that I've not forgotten. And frankly, if I find myself drifting too far from that shop floor walking, then I recalibrate quickly.
It just strikes me the universality of both of those. It's about how you show up, and you and I are both part of an international brotherhood at F3. It strikes me that you could apply those 2 principles at F3. You could apply it in a church setting, a manufacturing setting. Flood the room with light, whatever the room is. Flood the room with light, and to get on the floor. Mm-hmm. Be on the floor. Make your rounds. It just strikes me that those are universal truths.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. And it's what I've strived to instill in my children. My dad, who I hold as still the mentor in my life in almost every regard, is 87-year-old now, 87 now. He had his birthday on Monday, and is still practicing veterinary medicine. And he grew up in quite a blue collar environment, not in the nicest conditions. But he would always say there's dignity in all work as long as it's done to the best of one's ability. And so he always instilled a sense of empathy, compassion, and respect. And I don't think you can exercise that from the ivory tower.
So good, man. So good. I can imagine a blog that comes after our podcast just about those two things.
You would love him. We got to get him out to one of our workouts. He's still, the other thing he's doing, and now that I'm thinking about my father, he practiced. He had a specialty in veterinary medicine that was somewhat unique. So one of the things that he has done is mentor. Um, I don't know. I think there's probably 100 young veterinarians over his career, and those men and women, mostly women now, actually in that field, and made up the majority of the folks that he mentored, um, are like his children, and they are doing huge things. And so that's probably another lesson: light flooding darkness, walking the floor. And another mantra I have here at Heidrick with my teams is look to the left, look to the right. Who are you mentoring, and who are you being mentored by? And if you're looking to the right and you don't think you can learn from anybody, you should check yourself.
Mm. It just, I am thinking about, I'm in a season that you're a part of, the climb of Kilimanjaro, and the lots that are going on with that. And I realized I need support. And I looked to my left and looked to my right, and lo and behold, there's a 20-something guy. He's a pastor at my church. And I said, he's got something to offer me. To support me on this trajectory of growth that I'm in a season of growth. And so it really resonates, this self challenge of, if you don't think the person to your left or right can offer you something, check yourself. I think that's such a powerful watch word for at every level.
Yeah.
There's a gift that, small or great, that everybody can offer you.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, I have to say it in listening to that about a Kilimanjaro, which I'm so looking forward to in the fall of 25, with you, not for you, but with you. I think it is, I'm just so amazed by that organization, More Heart Than Scars, that I've just learned about through you. Huge blessing. And having my own journey with hidden scars, as they say, and recognizing that the mission is never directed at the person perhaps with the visible scar, but it really is about all of us with our hidden scars rallying around each other to achieve a goal. It's just it's remarkable. And I think it's, the title of your podcast, What Are We Not Talking About? I don't know if it's just life science leaders, but it's probably every leader, are those hidden scars. And too often we overcompensate with strange behavior to address those hidden scars, rather than, frankly, making them a superpower.
So go there with me. What's the invitation that you have, whether it's a broad shout to the world, or maybe a conversation you actually have with clients, partners? What's the invitation? Yeah. That's a conversation around invisible scars that leaders aren't having.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We had our global, our regional meeting last year, and we started out a bit differently. One of the things that we did at Novartis, and I think sometimes life science leaders need to be telling their patient stories more than they do. They're worried about goals, and they need to be talking about what's at the other end of the value chain, and that's patients. And so what we did at Novartis, we had a patient moment. And so we always start our meetings with talking about a patient who our clients are serving at the end of it. What are they working on, whether it be a neurodegenerative disease, a respiratory, or frankly, a mental health situation, or mental health application, whether it be through health tech or hospital systems, payers, and whatever our clients are doing for the good of the world. But in that meeting, I made this decision to share my story and my own um, um, journey with anxiety, rather significant anxiety, and not necessarily overcoming it because we learned to live with it. And what I've endeavored to do is make it a superpower, as I said, and how every time I see one of our teams in the healthcare services side of our business open an opportunity with a focus on mental health, or more importantly, providing access to the underserved who are suffering with mental health issues, it really warms my heart. And so I think, look, my own story, if I may, was one of moving to New Jersey from Maryland to take this job in the ivory towers of Novartis, being, if you will, and empowered to lead one of their more important and strategic programs that they'd taken a bet on based on really a patient number one who really was, for all intents and purposes, cured of her disease, and at the University of Pennsylvania, Penn Medicine. Moved a couple of surly teenagers out of middle school and high school. Had a lot of things going on in my life, new area, new schools, upset kids. And one day we had a launch of the program at the site in Morris Plains, New Jersey. And we had the global team, 300 people coming, and my job was to kind of give a keynote about this flagship site in front of 300 people flown in from all over the world from the company. And I followed. The stage was set. I was not used to that in my world of contract development and manufacturing. Spotlights, literally, microphones, stage in this parking lot. All these people waiting to hear from the head of operations for this program. And I followed my boss, who's became a dear friend. And as I guess they say in this day, he had all the riz, all the charisma, and he stood up there and, just kind of, wow. So I got up there and said, I gotta bring it. It was all me. I was on that first mountain journey that we talk about. I was producing what hadn't happened, what nobody knew is that the night before I was dealing with two somewhat traumatized teenagers about a new school in a new region, unpacking a house, an unhappy wife, hadn't hardly slept, stood up on that stage, hadn't thought, I'm great at speaking. I've got that charisma just like this guy. And I stood up there. I hadn't practiced anything. They were all looking, and I got into the flow a little bit, and I saw these lights. Literally, it was like a moment that kind of triggered, and I just everything went in slow motion, and I started to talk slowly, and I thought I was going to pass out. And one of my dear friends, now he's a dear friend, who was our head of commercial, stood up on stage, kind of helped me down, and we managed through it. I think good news. I was surrounded by lots of physicians, our chief medical officer, and they, we chalked it up as a big, blood pressure thing. When the reality, Jeff, is I had a massive panic attack, and that triggered a lot of things in me, namely stage fright. And my job was often to stand in front of teams and inspire them. And I was like Samson with the hair cut off. I had lost my voice. And through a lot of work, a lot of cognitive work, a lot of prayer, a lot of support, have understood that moment and how to, first of all, not make it about me like I was doing then, but also to embrace that part of me that does take things very seriously, that is prone to anxiety and panic, talk about it, and in some ways make it a superpower.
Yeah, it feels like the invitation to those that are listening, and to even those that aren't listening up to this episode, is this the word that's coming up for me is authenticity. To be authentic and real about what's going on in your heart, in your mind, in your body, and to be real, because so often that we feel the pressure to just perform and show up and to grin and bear it. And maybe there's moments to do that, but we do that at the risk of not being authentic at a minimum with ourselves, of what's really going on in our mind, body, soul, and spirit.
Mm.
And I just hear through your story an invitation to get real.
Mm. Thanks. As you said to me when we first met, you're an open book. I love that. You said, I got some questions for you. I'm an open book. These days I'm becoming probably more of an open book than some in my family would like. But I would say that, yeah. And, I'll say a few of us had lunch with a really inspiring CEO 2 days ago here in the show, who's leading just an incredibly cool organization. Focused on some of the newest modalities in cell and gene mainly, and providing services around the world. I've known him for a long time. I knew him in my industry days, and he's a sagely gent. And he was talking about humility and just the lack of humility. I mean, this conversation started with access and providing access to therapeutics to those who don't have access, and really creating systems that make them available. And then we got to talent, as we do. We started with his story, and then eventually we got to his team. He humbly said, I made a lot of bad decisions. I made decisions based on pedigree and things of that nature, and I was failing to look deeper at some of these important areas. And he just said, there is just a huge lack of humility in our industry. So you say authenticity, humility. That's what life science leaders sometimes aren't talking about, is humble leadership. And I just love opening projects for executives in my business, whether it be a CEO or a CTO or a CSO or whatever, COO. And we're doing the kickoff, and we talk always about the values of the company. And most of the time, I could sit here and rattle off what 90% would say. But when that CEO had one recently that said, humble charisma, it's awesome. Or fierce authenticity. Mm-hmm. Then I'm like, I can tell your story. Let's roll. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, that's just something we're not talking about. But look, we've all been on that first mountain journey. And boy, am I grateful and blessed that you, through listening to this show, introduced me to these concepts. Mm-hmm. as I intentionally work to be on that second mountain hike, with that first mountain always lurking in the background, though.
Could you give? I think this is really important, and we'll put the book. There's a book here by David Brooks. We'll put it in the show notes. But for you, could you just share with us what those two mountains mean to you? Mm-hmm. A first mountain and a second mountain pursuit.
Yeah. Well, I was, look, you gave me good advice just a few months ago. I think it was a little prayer you texted that said about, I'm a second mountain person. What is it? Some say, Monica, my wife, is good at mantras, and she'll write them, you say it until it happens. I am a second mountain person, because the first mountain is always calling. And I would be disingenuous to say that there are not days and moments and weeks that looks a lot like that first mountain. But look, I just chalk it up to that first mountain being about production. And let's put it in real terms because we both like mountains and we're going to climb a big one with 19,000 above sea level. I've climbed a few mountains and I've done it from the mindset of let's achieve, let's get there, let's get to the top. Now, when I go to my beloved spot in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, um, I'm enjoying the journey. When I get to the top, it may be less about the pursuit of that summit, but the journey that got there. And it might be stopping to chat with some folks, or maybe helping a person up that mountain, or just being with my wife and enjoying being with her in that moment. And so I think the first mountain production, second mountain purpose. I think it relates to what I was saying at the outset, just for a fierce recognition of who I am. I worked for Swiss companies as an operations head for 25 years. I was told in most of those 25 years that your very people-oriented, compassionate leadership needs to be addressed. And they didn't mean it in a positive way. It needs, we are process, KPIs, all that, by the way, think is important. But this style that you have, it's you need, to be more data focused, data driven. And so I heard it, I got better. I think there's room for that, but I'm at a point now where I am all into people oriented leadership.
Yeah. One of the things I come back to when I think about first mountain versus second is one of the ideas in the book that Brooks writes about is first mountain is about those resume virtues, and the second mountain is about those eulogy virtues, those things that they're going to be saying about you at your eulogy, and they're not going to be talking about data or KPIs at your eulogy. They're going to be talking about the person that you are. Did you flood the room with light? Did you mentor someone? Did you receive mentorship? It's just such a paradigm shifter it has been for me, and I know for you as well, to take my attention away from up and to the right, and instead, who do I want to be, and who am I becoming?
Amen. Yeah, I think for those of us, or I'll speak for me, who are type A, who are very prone to production. Typically, I think people who probably live with anxiety are those who are trying to achieve. I think it does require a degree of intentionality and authenticity, and to go there. And I think in my business, I mean, it does. I can spot it from a mile away now. There are a lot of executives that are climbing that first mountain. And where it breaks my heart is when I see sometimes the wake of people that are in the path. And one of the things that I'm most proud of at Novartis was not bringing the first immunotherapy on the planet to market, along with a lot of smarter people than me, I should mention. And I have a picture that I will treasure forever of the team of people at my farewell, who were part of my team, me standing in front, that made it happen. And I remember saying, you are the next medical pioneers. You've been part of something amazing. You may not even know it. And let me tell you a little story about that. One of those guys, I won't name him, I don't think we do that here. He was on my team leading manufacturing sciences. 32 at the time, maybe years old. What we would label in the business high potential. He was a hypo, and he should have been. Yeah, we were going to surround this young man and make him great. He called me, Jeff. Want to talk? So he's like a little brother. Hey, what's up? And how are the girls? 3 girls, lived here in Jersey, now up in Boston. And he said, I got some roles I need you to fill. And I said, I'm all in. So he's now leading a great organization, doing his thing, making his impact in the world. And very well may be a client. That's the stuff dreams are made of. When you see some of these people are CEOs now of companies, and that's second mountain stuff, my friend, when you see these people getting their wings.
So I'm going to ask you a really hard question to close out our conversation, because there's tons in what we just talked about. But I'm going to ask you to pick one conversation that you want every life science leader to have with their team, or maybe with themselves, over the next week. You just have to, there's just one. Maybe they'll decide that there's others, but from listening here, but one conversation that you want to ensure that each of them is going to have over the next week. What is that?
Yeah. I would say this. I would say take a deep breath, first of all. Step off that first mountain. Take a look at the horizon, your team. Walk the floor and ask the question, or invite them to share their story. And the most important part of that is to listen, and taking the time to really listen. Right. So I would say, and that will turn into many conversations, but it's a lot less about having a conversation than listening to a conversation.
I love it. I love it, man. Before we wrap, Jeff, is there anything happening at Heidrick Struggles that you want to put the spotlight on? Just for
Yeah, look, I, again, blessed that such a platform to work with great clients, great teams. It's, as I tell my teams, the stuff dreams are made of. But more importantly, I think we are all more than our jobs. And we need to remember that the blessings are everywhere, including our time together. And many, many adventures to come as we prepare for that awesome experience in Tanzania in 2025. So, look, I appreciate you, brother. Love you, and I am just blessed to call you a friend.
What a gift, man. What a gift. Thank you so much for being part of the show.
All right, Jeff. Take care.